Elliot Calder had built an empire without ever raising his voice. He had faced dangerous men and made them feel small. But nothing prepared him for what he saw through a bus window on a Thursday night. 5 young women sat inside, silent, frozen, one of them barefoot. Then their hands rose, a palm against the glass, thumb tucked in, fingers closing over it. Then another, and another, all 5. A silent signal the world was supposed to recognize. It means, help me. I'm in danger. The bus had already passed 12 crowded blocks of Chicago. Hundreds of people, hundreds of phones. No one noticed, until one man looked down from a balcony and felt something inside his chest open for the first time in 12 years. He stood up without a word, because the last time he ignored a signal like that, a woman died. Nobody in that restaurant noticed what was happening on the bus stopped at the red light below. It was a Thursday evening in downtown Chicago, the kind of evening where the city hums with routine, taxis honking, pedestrians weaving through crosswalks, the low rumble of the L train overhead. The air smelled like exhaust and coming rain. The Belle Cour was packed. 3 Michelin stars and a 6-month waitlist meant the second-floor balcony was reserved for people who didn't wait for anything. Elliot Calder was one of those people. He sat at the far end of the terrace, a glass of untouched bourbon near his hand, listening to 2 men across the table argue about a shipping route through the Great Lakes. He was 34 years old, dark-haired, clean-shaven, with the kind of stillness that made people either trust him completely or avoid him entirely. He wore a charcoal suit with no tie. His watch was expensive, but understated. Everything about him was understated, until it wasn't. He owned no company on paper. He held no title anyone would recognize. But the 2 men sitting across from him had each flown over 1,000 miles just to have this dinner. One was a logistics broker from Detroit. The other ran a maritime insurance firm out of New York. They needed Elliot's blessing to move product through the lakes. He hadn't given it yet. He was making them wait. But Elliot wasn't listening to them anymore. His eyes had drifted to the street below, not consciously, the way a dog's ears rotate toward a sound before the animal knows why. A city bus had rolled to a stop at the intersection, its brakes sighing against the curb. Through the wide windows on the passenger side, he could see a row of young women sitting close together. 5 of them, early 20s, maybe younger. They sat rigid, shoulders pulled inward, eyes fixed straight ahead. None of them were talking. None of them were looking at their phones. That was the first thing that didn't feel right. 5 young women on a bus in a major city, and not one of them was scrolling, texting, or talking. No earbuds, no shopping bags, no backpacks. They sat like statues, like people who had been told not to move. Behind them, in the aisle seat 1 row back, sat a man. Thick neck, baseball cap pulled low over his forehead, denim jacket stretched tight across his shoulders. His posture was different from theirs, relaxed, spread out, one arm draped over the back of the adjacent seat. He was watching them, not the way a companion watches friends. The way a guard watches prisoners. Elliot set down his bourbon. One of the women, the one closest to the window, with dark hair and a bruise just visible at her collarbone, lifted her right hand just barely off her lap. She pressed it flat against the glass with her palm facing outward. Then she tucked her thumb into her palm. Slowly, carefully, she curled her 4 fingers down over it, trapping the thumb beneath them. Her hand closed into a quiet fist against the window. Then she dropped it. The motion lasted less than 2 seconds. A second later, another woman did the same thing, blonde, thin, her left eye slightly swollen, palm up, thumb in, fingers closed. Then a third. Then the 4th and 5th, almost in unison, fast and trembling, like they knew this was the only chance they'd ever get. Their eyes never moved from the seats in front of them. The man behind them shifted his weight but didn't stand. He hadn't seen, but Elliot had. He knew that signal. He'd seen it in a Department of Homeland Security briefing 2 years ago, a meeting he wasn't technically supposed to attend, but when you fund the right people, you get invited to the right rooms. The gesture was the international distress signal. created during the pandemic for people who couldn't speak, couldn't call, couldn't scream. It was designed to be done with one hand, discreetly, silently. It meant one thing: I need help. I am in danger. And they had done it 5 times. The light turned green. The bus pulled away. Elliot stood up so fast his chair scraped against the stone terrace. The logistics broker stopped mid-sentence. "Elliot!" He didn't answer. He was already pulling out his phone, already walking toward the stairs. His mind was running calculations: the bus route, the direction it was headed, the number painted on its digital display above the windshield. He'd caught it, 73 North. "Elliot, we're in the middle of—" "The meeting's over," he said without turning around. "Victor will take care of the check." He hit the staircase and took the steps 2 at a time, his polished shoes slapping marble. His phone was already pressed to his ear. When the line connected, he didn't bother with a greeting. "Sully, I need a vehicle on Michigan Avenue heading north in the next 90 seconds. The CTA bus, Route 73, 5 women inside, 1 male handler sitting behind them. Do not lose that bus." There was no hesitation on the other end. There never was with Sullivan Cade. Sully had been with Elliot since they were teenagers, running errands for Elliot's father in Bridgeport. 2 kids counting cash in the back of a dry cleaner, learning to keep their mouths shut and their eyes open. Now Sully ran logistics for the entire Calder operation. He could have a helicopter in the air in 20 minutes. A car in 90 seconds was nothing. "I've got a car 2 blocks east, black Escalade. Ramos is driving. Get him on it, and pull up city traffic cams along the 73 route. I want to know every stop that bus makes, and every passenger that gets on or off." Elliot pushed through the restaurant's front doors and stepped onto the sidewalk. The evening air hit him cold. The bus was already a block and a half ahead, its red tail lights bleeding into the stream of traffic. A woman walking a poodle gave him a startled look as he brushed past her. He could still see the bus. He started walking fast, then broke into a jog, his dress shoes clicking hard against the pavement. A black Escalade appeared from a side street within a minute, slowing beside him with the rear door already opening. He climbed in before the vehicle fully stopped. "Stay 4 car lengths behind," he told Ramos. "Don't spook the driver. Don't get boxed in at a light." Ramos nodded. He was a stocky man in his 40s with a shaved head and hands that looked like they'd been made for exactly this kind of night. He didn't ask questions. As they followed the bus north through the city, Elliot sat in the back seat, with his jaw tight and his hands pressed together in front of his face. He was thinking, not just about the women, about the man, the handler, the way he'd sat behind them like a shepherd behind a flock. The way none of the women had dared to turn around, the way they'd coordinated the signal without speaking, which meant they'd planned it in advance, which meant they had a way of communicating the man didn't know about. This wasn't a boyfriend. This wasn't a chaperone. This was control, and Elliot Calder had seen control like that before. 12 years ago, when he was 22 and still learning his father's world, there had been a girl. Her name was Nina. She worked at a nail salon 2 blocks from one of the Calder warehouses on the south side. She was quiet. Always looked tired. Always wore long sleeves, even in the humid August heat. One of Elliot's guys mentioned offhand that she seemed off. Said she flinched whenever the salon owner walked past her station. Said she never left the building alone. Elliot noticed it once. Just once. He was walking past the salon on his way to a meeting, and he saw her through the plate glass window. She was bent over a woman's hand, painting nails, and the salon owner was standing behind her, saying something close to her ear. Nina's shoulders were up around her earlobes. Her whole body was braced. He told himself it wasn't his business. He told himself someone else would help her. He told himself she'd be fine. 3 weeks later, Nina was dead. She'd been found in a storage unit on the south side, dehydrated and beaten. The salon had been a front. Nina and 6 other women had been trafficked from Eastern Europe and forced to work 18-hour days, 7 days a week. Their captor was the salon owner, a man who smiled at customers and brought them sparkling water and had a Yelp page with 4.5 stars. The women slept on the salon floor after closing. They ate what they were given. They spoke when spoken to. Nina had tried to run. She'd made it 2 blocks before they caught her. They put her in the storage unit as punishment. She was there for 4 days before her body gave out. Elliot never forgot her face, not because he'd known her well, but because he hadn't known her at all. Because he'd had one moment, one clear, unmistakable moment, when something in him said look closer, and he chose to look away. He swore on everything he was that he would never do that again. The bus turned onto Clark Street, then again onto a side road near Uptown. The neighborhood changed. The restaurants and boutiques gave way to squat apartment buildings with security bars on the windows. Liquor stores with neon signs, a laundromat with one light on. It was getting darker, quieter. "He's not heading to the terminal," Elliot said. Sully's voice came through the phone. "I pulled the cam feeds. That same group boarded at Chinatown. The man was already with them at the stop. They got on together, single file. None of the women had bags. No purses, no phones, nothing. One of them was barefoot." Barefoot, Elliot's hand tightened around the phone. A woman on a city bus in Chicago with no shoes. That detail alone told a story that didn't need translation. "There's more," Sully continued. "I ran the man's face through the cam footage. He's been on that same route 3 times in the last 2 weeks. Always with a group. Always different women. He rides north, gets off somewhere past Foster, and meets a white cargo van. Same van each time. Different plates. Same vehicle profile. I'm working on it." "Where does Route 73 terminate?" "Howard Street, end of the line." "He's not going to Howard. He'll get off before that. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere with no cameras and a vehicle waiting." "You want me to bring in the full team?" Elliot paused. The full team meant a dozen men, armed, coordinated. It meant treating this like an operation. It meant crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. If the handler was connected to a larger network, if there were people above him with resources, with connections, with a kind of reach that made witnesses disappear, things could get complicated fast. But 5 women had pressed their palms to a window and begged a stranger for help. 5 women who probably didn't know his name, didn't know what he was, didn't know if anyone in the entire city gave a damn. They'd done it anyway. "Bring everyone," Elliot said. "And call Nora." Nora Whitfield was the one person in Elliot's circle who didn't carry a weapon. She was 51 years old, a former trauma counselor with silver-streaked hair, and a quiet, unshakable presence that could make a terrified person trust her in less than 30 seconds. She now ran a nonprofit called Threshold that helped trafficking survivors re-enter the world, finding them housing, medical care, legal representation, and the kind of patient, long-term support that no government program had the budget or the bandwidth to provide. Elliot funded Threshold anonymously, had been funding it for 11 years. Nora knew who he was. She knew what he did. She'd once told him that she didn't approve of his life, but she approved of his money, and she'd take every cent he offered because the women she served didn't care where it came from. He respected that. He respected her. 20 minutes later, the bus turned east on Foster Avenue, rolling through a stretch of road lined with low-rise apartment buildings and shuttered storefronts. The sky was fully dark now. Street lights buzzed on one by one, throwing pale orange circles on the wet pavement. A light drizzle had started. The street was nearly empty. The man in the baseball cap stood up. Elliot leaned forward. "He's moving." The man walked to the front of the bus and spoke to the driver. Whatever he said, maybe he flashed a badge, maybe he just had that kind of voice. The driver pulled over at the next corner, not a scheduled stop. The doors opened. The man stepped off first. Then the women followed, single file, heads down. They moved in perfect, horrible unison. No bumping, no hesitation, no one falling out of line. Like they'd been trained, like deviating from the line meant punishment. A white cargo van sat idling on the opposite side of the street. Its headlights were off. Its windows were tinted so dark they looked painted. "That van," Elliot said. "Get the plates." Ramos was already on it. He pulled to the curb half a block behind and killed the headlights. Through the windshield, they watched the man in the baseball cap lead the 5 women across the empty street. He opened the van's rear doors. There was no light inside. No seats, no handles on the inside of the doors. Just empty, padded darkness. The first woman climbed in without hesitation, not because she wanted to, because she'd learned that climbing in quickly hurt less than being slow. The second followed. Elliot felt something tighten behind his sternum, a pressure he recognized. It was the same feeling he'd had the night he learned about Nina, a cold, compressed fury that didn't burn outward but inward, like a star collapsing. "We go now," he said. 2 more vehicles materialized from opposite ends of the block, an SUV and a dark sedan, rolling into position with their lights off. 8 of Elliot's men stepped out in coordinated silence. No running, no shouting. They moved the way people move when they've done this before and prefer not to do it loudly. The man in the baseball cap didn't notice until it was too late. 2 of Elliot's men flanked the van's rear doors. 2 more positioned themselves at the front, blocking the driver's side. Ramos swung the Escalade sideways across the street behind the van, cutting off the only exit route. The van driver, a second man, heavy-set, with a phone pressed to his ear, looked up through his windshield and saw the wall of black vehicles and still figures. He froze. Elliot walked toward the handler alone, hands in the pockets of his suit jacket, steps even and unhurried, like a man taking a walk through his own backyard. The drizzle dotted his shoulders. He didn't seem to notice. The man in the baseball cap turned around, and for the first time, his posture changed. He wasn't relaxed anymore. His weight shifted to his back foot. His hands came up slightly, not quite fists, but not open either. He was calculating how many men, how far to run, whether the weight in his waistband was worth reaching for. "Who are you?" the man said. Elliot stopped 3 feet in front of him, close enough to speak quietly, close enough to see the man's pupils dilate. "That's not the question you should be asking," Elliot said. His voice was low, measured, almost conversational. "The question you should be asking is what happens next." The man's jaw tightened. He glanced to his left, then his right. Elliot's men were everywhere, on the sidewalk, by the van, across the street. None of them had drawn weapons. None of them needed to. The geometry of the situation was already decided. "I don't know what you think you saw." "I saw 5 women making the international distress signal on a city bus," Elliot said. "I saw you sitting 1 row behind them like a leash. I saw you redirect the bus to an unscheduled stop and walk them single file toward an unmarked cargo van with no rear seats, no interior lighting, and no handles on the inside of the doors." He tilted his head slightly. The gesture was almost casual, almost friendly. "I also ran your plates in the last 15 minutes. That van is registered to a shell company called Lakeline Movers LLC out of Gary, Indiana. Lakeline has been flagged in 2 federal investigations for labor trafficking across the Midwest. Your partner in the driver's seat made a phone call 9 minutes ago to a number linked to a motel in Rockford, Illinois, that was raided last year for holding women against their will. The call lasted 41 seconds. The handler's face went pale. The color drained from under his skin like someone had pulled a plug. He hadn't expected this. He'd expected a fight, maybe a carjacking, something crude and physical, something he could handle with his fists or the Glock tucked into his waistband. But this surgical, suffocating wall of information was something else entirely. "You're not cops," the man whispered. "No," Elliot said. "We're not." He let the silence sit for 3 full seconds. In the background, 3 of the women had climbed back out of the van. They stood on the sidewalk in a tight cluster, trembling, clutching each other's arms. One of them was crying silently, her shoulders shaking without sound. The 4th was still inside the van, pressed against the far wall. The 5th, the barefoot one, was sitting on the curb with her arms wrapped around her knees, rocking slowly back and forth. Elliot didn't look away from the handler. Here's what's going to happen. My associate is going to take your phone. Every contact, every message, every photo, every deleted thread. Then you're going to tell me who you work for, not the name you give the girls, not the fake company, the real name. The person who signs the leases, collects the money, and decides where they go. Next. I'm not telling you anything. Elliot stepped closer. His voice didn't rise. If anything, it got quieter. The way a blade gets sharper, the thinner it becomes. You're not understanding the situation. The police will be here in approximately 12 minutes. I've already made sure of that. The call went out before I got out of this car. The FBI field office has been notified. The question isn't whether you go to jail tonight. You will. The question is what condition you're in when they arrive. He paused. And more importantly, what information I've already handed them about your entire operation before you even get processed. The handler's bravado cracked. It didn't shatter. Men like him didn't break clean. They splintered, but it cracked visibly. His eyes darted to the van driver, who was already being pulled from the cab by two of Elliot's men. His phone confiscated, his wrists secured with zip ties applied with clinical efficiency. The driver didn't resist. He looked like a man who had just realized the ground beneath him had been hollow all along. The name, Elliot said. The handler swallowed. His Adam's apple moved like a stone. Vanek, he said. His voice had changed. Smaller now. Gregor Vanek. He runs everything out of Milwaukee. The motels, the transport, the job placements, the debt collection, all of it. I move them. That's all I do. That's not all you do, Elliot said. But that's for a jury to decide. He stepped back and pulled out his phone. The call took 8 seconds. Sully. The name is Gregor Vanek. Milwaukee-based. Start pulling everything. Property records, business filings, LLC registrations, known associates, travel patterns. I want a full package ready for the bureau by morning. Make it clean. Make it airtight. He hung up. Then he turned toward the women. They hadn't moved. They stood in a loose, trembling cluster on the sidewalk, backlit by the one working streetlight on the block. 4 of them were watching him with wide, uncertain eyes, the eyes of people who had stopped expecting rescue a long time ago and didn't know yet whether this was real. The 5th, the barefoot one, was still on the curb, rocking. Elliot walked toward her slowly. He crouched down about 4 feet away, close enough to speak, far enough that she could see his hands, see that they were empty and still. He rested them on his knees. My name is Elliot, he said. Nobody is going to hurt you, not tonight, not anymore. She didn't look up. Her feet were dirty and cracked, raw at the heels. She was wearing a thin cotton dress 2 sizes too big, the kind you'd find in a donation bin. Her hair was matted on one side like she'd been sleeping on concrete. A faint scar traced the edge of her jaw. Do you understand what I'm saying? He asked gently. She nodded, just barely, a movement so small it could have been a tremor. Can you tell me your name? A long pause. The drizzle fell. Between them, somewhere behind Elliot, one of the other women let out a soft, broken sound. Not a word, just a release, like a breath held for months, finally escaping. Then the barefoot woman spoke. Her voice was so small, it barely carried over the sound of the rain. Maren. Maren. Okay, Maren, there's someone coming to see you. Her name is Nora. She's kind and she's safe, and she has been doing this for a very long time. She's going to take you somewhere warm. You don't have to talk. You don't have to explain anything. You don't owe anyone a story. You just have to let us help you. Can you do that? Another nod. This time, she looked up. Her eyes were dark and hollowed, rimmed with exhaustion so deep it looked like something permanent. But somewhere beneath it, beneath the fear and the damage and the months of silence, there was something else. Something fragile and flickering like a pilot light that had almost gone out but hadn't. Relief. Within the hour, the block was transformed. 2 Chicago PD squad cars, an unmarked federal vehicle, 2 FBI field agents pulled from a trafficking task force that had been investigating Vanek's network for months, but hadn't been able to pin down the transport routes or identify the handlers. Elliot's information, the plates, the phone records, the shell company, the name, filled in gaps they'd been chasing for the better part of a year. The handler and the driver were taken into federal custody. The women were transported to a secure residential facility operated by Nora's organization. Medical staff were waiting when they arrived, counselors, interpreters for 3 languages, clean clothes, warm food, beds with real sheets, and doors that locked from the inside. Nora was there. She sat with each of them, one at a time, and said the same thing. You are safe. You are believed. Whatever you need, we will try. Over the next 3 days, the women began to speak. Their names were Maren, Luisa, Katja, Joy, and Anna. They came from 4 different countries and had never met before 8 months ago. Maren was from a small town in rural Minnesota. Luisa from a village outside Guatemala City. Katja and Anna were cousins from Odessa, Ukraine. Joy was from Cebu in the Philippines. They had been brought together in a basement apartment in Milwaukee and told they owed debts they would never be able to repay, for their transport, for their housing, for the food they ate. Their passports, the ones who had them, were taken on the first night. Their phones were confiscated. They were told that if they tried to leave, their families would be found. Luisa was shown a photograph of her mother's house. Joy was read her sister's phone number aloud, digit by digit, to make the threat concrete. For 8 months, they had been moved from city to city, motel to motel, forced to work in conditions that no human being should endure. They were fed once a day. They slept in shifts on whatever surface was available. They communicated with each other in whispers, gestures, and fragments of shared language, because they'd learned that spoken words at normal volume could be punished. The distress signal, the one Elliot had seen through the bus window, had been taught to them by Maren. She'd learned it from a social media video years ago, long before she'd ever imagined she'd need it. When they were put on the bus that Thursday evening for transport to a new location, Maren told the others what to do. She used hand signs, quick and careful, while the handler's attention was on his phone. She told them to watch the windows. Watch for someone, anyone, who might be looking. She didn't know if anyone would see. She did it anyway. She'd done it 13 times before, on other buses, through motel windows, in parking lots. 13 times, no one noticed, or they noticed and didn't understand, or they understood and didn't care. The 14th time, someone saw, 2 weeks after. The rescue. Gregor Vanek was arrested at a storage facility outside Milwaukee during a coordinated federal raid. Agents seized financial records, burner phones, and documentation of a trafficking network that had moved over 40 women across 6 states in the past 3 years. 14 additional victims were recovered from locations in Wisconsin, Indiana, and Iowa. The handler from the bus, a man named Dale Oster, pleaded guilty to federal trafficking and kidnapping charges to avoid trial. The van driver cooperated fully in exchange for a reduced sentence. 7 additional arrests followed over the next month. The case made national news. The women's identities were protected. Their faces never appeared on screen. Elliot Calder's name never appeared in a single report. 3 months later, on a rainy Tuesday in April, Elliot received a letter, no return address, handwritten on plain white paper. It had been forwarded through Nora's organization, which meant the sender had asked for it to be delivered but didn't know where he lived. Didn't even know his last name. He opened it at his kitchen table, alone, with the rain streaking down the windows behind him. Dear Elliot, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't even know your last name. But Nora said she would try to get this to you, and I believe her, because she has not lied to me yet, and that is something I'm still getting used to, people not lying. My name is Maren. I was the one sitting on the curb that night, the one with no shoes. I want you to know something about that night that I don't think you know. When we got on that bus, I had already decided it was over, not the situation. Me. I had decided that if nobody saw us, if the signal didn't work one more time, I was going to stop trying, stop eating, stop fighting, stop everything. I had nothing left. 14 times I raised my hand and asked the world to see me. 14 times nothing happened. But you saw. You didn't. Just see. You came. I'm writing this from a small apartment that Nora's organization helped me find. I have a bed that is mine. I have a door that locks from the inside. I am learning to sleep with the lights off again. Which sounds like a small thing, but it is not small at all. I started taking classes to become a crisis counselor. I want to work with women like me. Not because I have healed. I haven't, not all the way, and maybe I never will completely. But because I know what it feels like to make a signal and have nobody answer, and I know what it feels like when someone finally does. You changed 5 lives on a Thursday evening. I hope one day I can change even one. Thank you for seeing me. Maren. Elliot folded the letter carefully and placed it in the inside pocket of his jacket, close to his chest. He sat there for a long time, listening to the rain hit the glass. He thought about Nina, about the nail salon, about the moment he'd looked through that plate glass window and chosen to keep walking. He thought about all the years since, the years of building something most people would call unforgivable, an empire of shadow and leverage and calculated risk. He thought about the strange, imperfect math of a life where the same hands that ran that empire had also, on one ordinary Thursday, reached out and pulled 5 women back from the edge of something he couldn't name, but understood in his bones. He didn't call anyone. He didn't pour a drink. He just sat in the quiet of his kitchen and let the weight of it settle over him like something he'd been carrying for a long time had finally been set down. Outside, the rain kept falling. The city kept moving. Somewhere across town, in a small apartment with a lock on the inside of the door, a woman who had once been barefoot on a curb was studying for her first exam, a lamp on beside her, learning to sleep with the lights off one night at a time. And somewhere in the distance, a bus rolled through a wet intersection, its windows glowing faintly in the dark, carrying strangers who would never know how close they were to someone who needed them, just once, to look. The signal is simple. You raise your hand with your palm facing outward. You tuck your thumb into your palm. Then you close your 4 fingers down over it, trapping the thumb beneath them. It takes less than 2 seconds. It can be done with one hand. It makes no sound. It means, I need help. I am in danger. It was created during the pandemic for people who couldn't call for help. People trapped in homes, in rooms, in situations where speaking would put them at risk. It has since been recognized worldwide as a silent plea that can be made anywhere by anyone without a single word. You might never see it, but if you do, don't look away.